Hey everyone, Austin here again with another Let's Play video. Today is going to be Final Fight 2 by Capcom for the Super Nintendo. This is actually a video I meant to do sometime back in the early parts of September when I did my first Final Fight Let's Play for the Super Nintendo. But October just sort of blindsided me out of nowhere, and I had to quickly get some Let's Plays prepped for October. And so what's funny is I'm actually recording this video at the very end of September, but it's not going to get posted until sometime in November. So if any of you guys are watching this, I hope you guys enjoyed the October Let's Plays and live streams and whatnot. Yeah. Let's see what we can do with Final Fight 2 here on the Super Nintendo. Before we get things kicked off, as usual, I'd like to give a big shout out to my current Patreon backers. Unfortunately, since I am recording this in September, I don't know if I got any new backers or not come October. So if you're not listed there and you are a new backer from October, I apologize for that. Your name will be on the next video. Also, same thing goes with the live stream super chatters. Thank you so much for your continued support, guys, and your patronage. It really makes a difference here on this channel. So here's the story and whatnot. Basically, there's some different characters in this game. You've got Mike Hager, who is the mayor of Metro City from the first Final Fight. And now, instead of Guy, you've got Mackie. And instead of Cody, you've got Carlos, I believe. Yeah, my mind just like drew a blank. So I'll go ahead and just let the story play out here, and then we'll go ahead and we'll peruse the options menu. And Carlos apparently loves kicking butts, according to the story. So Final Fight 2, I don't think we're going to have too much of a problem with this game. Some of you guys probably remember that in the first Final Fight Let's Play, I just had a hell of a time trying to get that game recorded. This game, I think it's going to be the exact opposite. I don't think we're going to really have much trouble at all. We might not one credit clear it, but if we don't, we should get really close. I have one credit cleared this game twice now in the last month. And then there was a session where I did not. And then there was another session where I tried playing it on expert mode, and I still got really far before getting my first game over. So yeah, we're gonna go ahead and play as Carlos. Hager is really slow. Mackie, her attack range is just really weird to me. And Carlos just feels the most like Guy from the first Final Fight, and so he feels the best to me overall. So we're gonna go ahead and just jump in with him. And we've got 6 levels in the game. So we start off basically in China. And unlike the first Final Fight, instead of just going around in one city, you actually go around the world, which might be interesting for some players. For me, I actually prefer the setup of the original Final Fight, and what you're gonna probably be hearing me say a lot throughout this playthrough is I prefer I prefer such and such aspect of this game more in the first Final Fight. You're probably going to be hearing that a lot because, really, to me, Final Fight 2 is pretty much an inferior game in just about every way possible. There's not really... Well, actually, that's not entirely true. One huge advantage Final Fight 2 has, and this isn't something I personally care about because I usually play these games solo, but if you're more of a casual player and, you know, you like just like firing up a beat 'em up with a friend, well, you can do that in Final Fight 2. Final Fight 2 has a 2-player mode, unlike the first Final Fight on Super Nintendo. So that is actually one way Final Fight 2 is not inferior to the first Final Fight, specifically on Super Nintendo. But just about everything else about this game, I actually prefer how it was done more in the first Final Fight. The first Final Fight is a more chaotic game, despite even the Super Nintendo version only still having 3 enemy cap on screen. There's just more going on. You've got guys with knives in Final Fight 1, that they're always throwing them at you. Enemies have more varied patterns in the first Final Fight. You can pick up the knives that you knock out of enemies' hands, things like that. It's just a more fast-paced game that gets less repetitive over the course of the session. It still gets repetitive, but not nearly as repetitive as this game, and you guys will see exactly what I mean. I'm trying to be nice here, but Final Fight 2 gets extremely repetitive. One of the biggest issues with this game, and I really sound like I'm really railing on this game, like, oh, this guy does not like this game, and that's actually not true. When I first played through this game on Twitch, I was very, very, very unimpressed with it. But after running through the game another, 3 or 4 times, it's warmed up. I've warmed up to it. I do like Final Fight 2. It's one of those games that should have been like this awesome sequel, but it wasn't to be, apparently. The first Final Fight is just pretty much superior in every way, from a single-player standpoint on Super Nintendo. And obviously, it's got the issue of not having 2-player mode for those of you guys that like doing that. But yeah, I was gonna say something, and I just completely lost my train of thought. Go figure. I gotta stop recording these things after I get off work. Not that my Shadowgate Let's Play from October was really any better, because I did that actually in the same day as doing this Let's Play, except at the opposite end of the day. So I basically woke up and recorded Shadowgate on the NES, and if you guys missed out on those October Let's Plays, you should probably go check them out. Some of them are probably mildly entertaining at the very least. If anything, you can see what how not to do Let's Plays. Like waking up and being really tired and then going to do a Let's Play, and yeah. Oh man. So one of these enemies here is called Alec. He's basically the replacement of the various fat guys in the first Final Fight, and he can be very, very dangerous, because not only does he charge at you like the other fat guys do in the first Final Fight, but he's got this electricity weapon. This what does it look like? Does he have yeah, he's like walking with like a car battery, yeah, and he charges at you with both terminals pretty much charged up, and if you try to hit him dead on when he charges at you like that, you'll probably get hit. So one thing I think I actually remember my train of thought. One thing about Final Fight 2 is that enemies take forever to take out, and it's not that bad on the first level, but as you progress through the game, it gets worse and worse and worse. And one thing I figured out is you can use the extra joy attack. So by pressing attack and jump together, you do this attack. It was also in the first Final Fight. It's basically a means to get out of, being ganged up on enemies. So if you get surrounded or an enemy starts attacking you, you can use your extra joy, and you'll pretty much guaranteed get out of like a combo that an enemy's doing to you. Unlike the first Final Fight, though, the extra joy in this actually does a lot of damage. It does more damage than your regular attacks do. And that actually makes a big difference later on in the game when enemies start to become more sponge-like. They really just absorb the hits that you do. This is actually a stick you could use, or a 2x4 as the game says. Unfortunately, it's really not all that useful. I find that you're just better off skipping the weapons. Not all the weapons in this game, but like the 2x4 in particular is just not that useful. I mean, it's okay on the first level, but on subsequent levels, it actually dishes out less damage than your standard attacks do. One of the things about using weapons in the first Final Fight is they did more damage than your fists or your jump kicks or things like that. In Final Fight 2, it's the opposite. The weapons have been gimped in this game, which is one of the many aspects that leads this to be inferior to the first Final Fight on Super Nintendo. And in general, I mean, the arcade version of Final Fight is just an amazing game. The Sega CD version is also great, as is the Game Boy Advance version. But when it comes to the Super Nintendo version, this is definitely inferior to the even just the Super Nintendo version of Final Fight in just about every way. Alright, I gotta shut up about that, because I know I'm gonna ruin someone's childhood and I'm gonna get a complaint in the comments section, so let me back off that tangent for a little bit. So this is our first boss, Wan Wan, and what you're gonna find in this game is a lot of the bosses are actually pretty simple. So Wan Wan doesn't really do much except for hop around, and then he does this large jump, and you just want to move out of the way when he does that, and then you can just run up to him just like so. Now, most bosses in this game, you don't want to be sitting there punching them as they get up. They've got a lot of invincibility frames. So you just want to wait for their weak spots. Well, not even their weak spots, because some of these bosses are pretty dumb. A lot of them you can just run up to them like this. I can't really complain about this. This isn't meant to be a complaint. Because like the first boss in the first final fight, Thrasher, or Damned in the arcade version, as he's known, you know, you can still just run up to him and grab him, but he also bounces around the place constantly. He's constantly doing attacks. He's still a dangerous boss. Wan, on the other hand, not so much. He's pretty much just like a jumping punching bag, and that's pretty much it. And you'll find that a couple of the bosses in this game are kind of like that. And the final boss in particular, oh, I'm going to save it. I'm going to save it for the end. I'm not even going to spoil it, guys. If you want to see the final boss, either wait until then or just skip ahead to the end of the video. It's in Japan, so if you just want to skip ahead just to see the final boss and see how dumb it is, you know, feel free to do that. But yeah, I won't spoil that. You guys can either wait or skip ahead and check that out. It just really goes to show how little thought was put into some of the boss fights in this game. That's not to say all the bosses are gimpy or not challenging. There are a couple bosses in this game. Like, you do fight another variation of Rolento, which those of you guys only familiar with Super Nintendo Final Fight will have no idea who he is. But Rolento was actually the he was a boss in the first Final Fight in the arcade, and subsequently on the Sega CD and things like that. But unfortunately, the level that he's the boss of, it was chopped out of the Super Nintendo version. So if you played Final Fight 2 and just Final Fight 1 on Super Nintendo only, you never played the arcade version of Final Fight 1, then you know, the Rolento variation in this game will be new to you. But for people that, you know, veterans of the arcade Final Fight will know exactly who he is. And here is the Andor. This is when the Andors start appearing. This is a regular Andor, so he's a little more aggressive than the Andor Jr., just like in Final Fight, the original. However, Andor Jr. is no longer red. The standard Andor is red in this one. And look at these jump kicks to his face. You'll notice like the sponge effect is already kicking in. We're only on the second level. So basically, you know, the damage scaling has really kicked in, and your attacks are doing less damage now. Sometimes you'll just run into some of these, you know, these basic enemies, and you'll notice that you're doing pretty good damage, but then, you know, heavier ones pop in, and the damage scaling just is absolutely awful. You'll notice you're barely doing any damage. It's actually not too bad against these guys right now, and it definitely helps if you grab the enemies and do the knee attack, so I'm not going to bother with these guys. Those big bear looking guys, the Zangief looking guys, you got to watch out for them. Just jump kick them or do punches. Try to stay as far away as you can, because if you get too close, they have a tendency of they really have a tendency of just grabbing you. So there were enemies in the first Final Fight that would block, and those guys, the bear-looking guys in this, also block. But unlike the guys in the first Final Fight, the blocking guys in this game were actually more of a pain to deal with. You can't always just walk up to them and grab them. And here's the Alec guy again. We're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna jump kick him. This is pretty much the best way to deal with these guys. When you see, you know, their battery terminals, their battery cables just charged up. I don't even know what that is that they've got. It almost looks like he's got some kind of like forks in his hands or something like that. Just like in the original Final Fight, if you're in the middle of a combo, you can also hold up or in the opposite direction, and that'll actually throw your enemies as your last hit in your combo. This is really good for crowd control, and if you're trying to get a 1 credit clear on a game like this, crowd control is really important. So, you know, and one of the things about, you know, Super Nintendo Final Fight 2, and it's the same thing with the first Final Fight on Super Nintendo specifically, is that there's a 3 enemy cap. And so you can only have a maximum of 3 enemies on the screen at once. So it makes it very easy to control the crowds in this game. Like right now, this is a good position actually, because all the enemies are on the same side of the screen. And I could just walk over, go back and jump kick them, just rinse and repeat. It takes a while, and it's going to take even longer on subsequent levels. Just wait and see. You will see. So we've got about half of our health. I'm going to try to play it safe now, because I don't want to lose any lives if at all possible. I would actually really like to get a 1 credit clear on this. I always like doing that on these Let's Plays. It's always a good feeling. I mean, even on games that aren't like horribly difficult, it's just nice knowing that I've got a run uploaded to the internet of like a 1cc. That's always a good feeling. So I can go back later on and be like, oh yeah, that's right, I did 1cc that game. And I know some of you guys like seeing me clear these games well, like not credit feed a bunch. And I know some of you guys like seeing me continue and things like that, but there's also others out there that I know also like seeing me, you know, beat these games on 1 credit, basically without continuing. But yeah, if you're looking for a beat-em-up that is pretty easy to 1 credit clear, though, look no further than Final Fight 2. I mean, beat-em-ups, you know, it's typically a very difficult genre. A lot of times they're very unfair. Like, there's that Alec guy, that's what I was talking about. You don't want to ever hit him or attack him head-on when he's, you know, clearly about to charge at you. I'm gonna throw that guy into him. Oh, what? That was odd. So he charged at me even though he wasn't electrically charged up, and it still actually hit me. So we gotta focus better on this crowd control. Now these guys, Robert, and I think the other one might be Leon, they're basically the knife guys in this game, except they don't actually throw knives. However, they will be off the screen and then jump in onto the screen, usually right on top of you. And that can be very problematic, so you gotta watch out for those guys. Alright, here's our boss. I'm gonna throw him over there and then try to jump kick him. And basically what he'll do is he'll just, if you get your distance, he'll just kind of do this all day when you hit him. And we're just gonna keep this up as long as we can. That's not good. Yeah. Ah, I knew I was gonna get hit by that. Now, just like in the first Final Fight, you also have to deal with, you know, enemies on your boss fights. And the boss fights themselves usually aren't that bad. It's usually the enemies you have to deal with in conjunction with the boss. They basically just get in the way and they clutter things up. They make it hard to, you know, they make it hard to just focus on the boss itself. Oh, I got killed again. So that's 2 lives lost on what's really a relatively easy boss. So that's a shame. Now we will get other extra lives in the game. You can get extra life pickups in this version of the game, or this version of Well, I don't even know why I'm saying version. This aren't really any other versions of Final Fight 2. It's a Super Nintendo exclusive as far as I recall. But in Final Fight 2, much like Final Fight Guy on Super Nintendo, you actually do get extra life pickups, which is nice. And you also get extra lives from points. It's pretty much got the same extra life system from, you know, the original Final Fight. I think it's like 100,000 points for your first extra life, and it might be 200,000 points for every other extra life. So even though we just lost 2 lives there, we will be getting other extra lives for sure, guaranteed. So when I was streaming this a couple of weeks ago, well, a couple of weeks ago as of doing this video, people pointed out how brown this game is, and they were really onto something. This game has a lot of browns in it. And it's one of the things that's just kind of sad about Final Fight 2. It's just like the visual style. I don't know, it just doesn't come off as being as interesting to me as the original Final Fight. Part of that's probably the considerable use of browns. I mean, not just on the backgrounds, but a lot of the enemies. There's just a lot of beige and brown and muted colors like that. Also, one thing that I noticed through playing this a bunch is that it kind of lacks the cohesiveness of the original Final Fight, because instead of, walking around in a singular city and feeling like it all connected together, you're going across the world in this game. And so, like, the stages don't really feel like they gel together, if that makes any sense. And it doesn't help that a lot of the places you go to, they just all look run down. And I don't know, I feel like there's a lot of lost potential. A lot of potential lost with this game. A lot of opportunities lost to really show off some cool backgrounds, some cool scenery and things like that. But everything just looks kind of like dull and drab and run down. And it's one thing in like a city environment, like the first Final Fight. The whole city's basically been, gone to hell. And that's what Mike Haggar's there for. He's there to clean things up. But you're going to all over the world, and it just looks like you're not going to very, I should say, well-developed areas for the most part. A lot of the places you go to are just completely beat up, tore down. There's not really much in the way of civilization, technology, things like that. Now, there is a level where you actually go to, I think it's Britain, and so, you do get some cityscapes, and you ride along the top of a train, and that's cool. But a lot of the rest of the game is just like dirt and barrels and things like that, like this stage. It's just not very interesting to look at, unfortunately. Yep, there's the Leon character. So these are probably some of the worst enemies in the game, just because they bounce all over the place. Now, there was Roxy and Poison in the original Final Fight, and, they could be a little tough to deal with as well, but the way they bounced around, they didn't usually just bounce straight towards you. Like, they would just kind of like jump all over the place randomly. They did have some attacks where they would try to jump on you, but usually it wasn't something that just happened immediately. The Roberts and Leons in this game, they'll be off screen and then just jump straight to you, like it's a homing attack or something. And it's kind of a cheap attack. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you had to incorporate some kind of challenge into the game because, you know, there's not as much going on in this game as there was in the first Final Fight, and so, you know, it's not like I'm complaining about them, but I'm just drawing comparisons to the original Final Fight with its jumping enemies. So you can see how the weapons here are really, like, the damage scaling is not doing it any favors. This weapon still isn't horrible, but look at that, I got hit once and the weapon's gone. Which is really a shame, because in the first Final Fight, and I hate to keep making comparisons, but in the first Final Fight, you get tons of weapons throughout the course of the game. Either through barrels or broken objects, or knives. You know, you get the Hollywoods and the Elgatos, which are the knife enemies in that game, and they've constantly got knives. And so you've constantly got, you know, weapons at your disposal. Weapons appear very, very infrequently in Final Fight 2, unfortunately. Maybe a couple times per level, and that's it. So that's another reason why the game can get more repetitive than the original Final Fight, is you have less, basically, attacks to mix things up. You have less weapons that appear. And these are just actually observations I didn't really notice when I was first playing this game. Trying to learn it, trying to finish it for the first time. But through subsequent runs, I was like, you know what? I just realized there aren't that many weapons appearing. So it's one of those observations I picked up more recently. Alright, well that was bad. Because of course these guys are jumping around like crazy. It's alright. We are, I think, actually close to the boss fight. And I couldn't do anything about... Actually, I probably could have used my extra joy attack, and I gotta be doing that more often. See, just like that. Alright, so we're actually really close to the boss fight now. You know, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Since we're really low on health again, unfortunately. Oh, and here are the equivalent of the fire-based Hollywoods in the first Final Fight. Alright, Bratkin, this is our boss for this level. And basically he just jumps up and does a jump kick. And for that, you just kind of want to move out of the way as he's doing it. There he goes, and then you can just grab him when he does it. See, that's why you don't want to get close to those guys. They basically just grab you like that. And I made the mistake of just running right into him. So with this Bratkin guy, you're basically just waiting for him to jump. And if he doesn't jump, you can just give him a jump kick to the face. Kind of like so. And just wait for him to jump. There's his jump. Now you can attack him. Oops. And he grabbed me once again. Alright, do your jump. Ah! On screen, preferably, so I can, you know, actually see where you are. Alright, now we might have this without too much trouble. Just wait for his jump. There it is. Run back into him. Oh, what? That wasn't supposed to happen. Man, we're losing a lot of lives. Unnecessarily, really. These are lives I really shouldn't be losing at all. Not in the way I am. I mean, 1 life here and there is fine, but I've lost, I think, 4 lives already. Yeah, that sucks. I actually should have been able to defeat him without losing a life. Well, that's awful. Well, we're pretty much halfway through the game now, but this boss in England can be rather difficult. There is a hidden extra life here, though. I actually just picked it up, so there is that. We just got that. And here's a knife. It's one of the few knives in the game. And one of the funny things about this level is that, and this is kind of just out of left field, honestly. It sounds like it uses like a remixed, or it pays homage to the old Peter Gunn theme, which you found used in games like Spy Hunter. And I'm not really sure it fits the rest of the soundtrack in the game. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? So these Elliot guys are really, really fast. They just try to... they basically just go to the other side of the screen and just sit there. They're not hard to take out, but they can be annoying just because they do walk all over the place. So here you can see the spongy nature of these enemies just really, really kicking in now. Alright, so this part can be tough, actually. This is the screen change. So if I get a game over, this is where I come back in. Now, this section is really, really long, and there's no other screen change until you get, up through the boss. So if you get a game over at the boss, you gotta come all the way back here, fight all these enemies again, and that could be a little aggravating. Alright, we're gonna just jump kick this guy. The Alex, if you get them down on the ground, then you can just get on top of them and just punch. And just, like, as they wake up, they'll just wake up into your fist. There's an Andor Jr. And that was dumb. I had my jump kick out. I shouldn't have gotten hit by him. All right. Oh, see, that was dumb on my part. I paid the price for that. This is why the Zangief looking guys, you don't just walk right into them in this. And that's a habit that's tough for me to get out of, because the Axel and Slash enemies in the first final fight, you know, the guys that block, you could just walk right up to them. They were pretty much no threat in that game. But the Zangief looking guys, which are basically the equivalent to those characters, but in Final Fight 2, they're much more dangerous if you just walk right up to them. So you don't want to walk right up to them like I was. Alright, so this is Felipe. He is a pain. Jump kicking him over and over seems to do the trick. Somewhat, anyway. But he's got that slide attack, which is actually very reminiscent of the Hollywoods and Elgatos from the first Final Fight. And I think he's one of the only enemies in the game that does a move like that, where he actually slides along the ground, which goes under your attacks. That's the dangerous thing about it. I noticed that on Expert Mode, he's actually really, really fast. He's actually not that bad right now. But if he gets up close, you know, he'll do that slide move, and that's dangerous. Wow, we actually got him without dying. That's great. I'll take it. Alright, so this is a bonus stage. You don't want to hit these oil drums when they're on fire, because that'll happen. And that's that. I've never gotten a perfect on these, or on this bonus stage in particular. Assuming it's possible. I assume it is. So just like the first Final Fight, they do hide, you know, extra lives and point icons and things like that behind the pillars. So I actually just picked up a point icon. Which I'm okay with that. You know, an extra life would be better, but you do get extra lives from points. So if you're trying to stay alive, it's good to get as many point icons as you possibly can. See, there's an extra life from points. And when the Alex come on screen, it's like you really gotta you gotta focus on those guys. I just got some more points. I do wish they gave me more health in this game, though. There's not as many destructible objects as there are in the first Final Fight. And this one has a tendency of giving you lots of points and very little health. And as you can tell, this is yet another level filled with glorious, glorious brown and beige. Even the graffiti in the back is a shade of brown as well. Like, you'd think they might have, like, made it blue or red or something like that, but nope. But yeah, this is the level where we fight the variation on Rolento. His name in this one is just Rolent. It's not Rolento. So is it the same character? I don't know. We speculated on stream that, I speculated anyway that it's not, because I figured if it was Rolento, they would have just called him that. But technically Rolento dies in the first final fight, when you think about it. He basically blows himself up with grenades. Alright, we're already 40 minutes in, and it just feels like, you know, by this point the game should be over. Alright, so we basically just picked up an invincibility power-up. This actually is a carryover from, I think, Final Fight Guy on Super Nintendo. So Final Fight Guy is actually really interesting in that it's like a slightly reworked version of the original Final Fight on Super Nintendo, and it also has the character Guy. I hadn't really researched it much, you know, before I did my Super Nintendo Final Fight Let's Play, but I did afterwards. Someone posted a link in the comments section with, to a really cool website called the Cutting Room Floor, that I've heard of before, and I've probably been to before, I just completely forgot about it, and it had a really interesting article on the original Final Fight for Super Nintendo, and Final Fight Guy subsequently, the differences and things like that. And one of the additions to Final Fight Guy was an invincibility power-up. And it looks like that was carried over into Final Fight 2, along with the extra Guy icons, which were also in Final Fight Guy on Super Nintendo, but not the original Final Fight on Super Nintendo. Gotta get these guys over here, because if I can do that, I can just punch them as they get up. Just like that. Ah, there's so many of them. Come on, dude. There you go. So we're pretty close to the boss fight now. I think what would have been really cool is if you got to fight Rolento or his variation on this elevator, because that would have made it sort of made up actually for the missing industrial zone level in the first Final Fight on Super Nintendo. So the final part of the industrial zone is a rising elevator like this, where enemies fall down from the sky, basically. Not really the sky, but higher up. And then you fight Rolento afterwards. He hops onto the elevator, he basically does this. Actually, you know what's funny? I wonder if he is Rolento, and they just didn't have space for the O. No, they had space. There's other enemies with longer names. Now, unfortunately, he just kind of like bounces around the place. He's very difficult to hit. When he jumps down like that, he'll do a jump kick sometimes. And again, a lot of these bosses have invincibility frames after they get up, so you can't just, like, do a jump kick on their face as they're getting up, because your foot's gonna go right through the enemy. I almost don't even care if I lose a life or two here, because we're actually close to the end of the game now. And as long as I can get to the final boss with at least one life, we'll be good. Pretty much guaranteed. The final boss is really a joke in this game. He's an absolute joke. There's one more reason why I want to try to beat this on expert mode, because I want to see... I want to see if the final boss is actually challenging on expert mode. So basically, Rolento, I'm just going to keep calling him Rolento. Rolent sounds just so weird. I don't know, doesn't even sound like a name. It sounds like a knockoff watch or something like that. And this is where, you know, like, the spongy nature of the enemies just... it really gets on your nerves, because look at that, I just jump kicked him, barely did any damage. Even if you do your knee attack, it still doesn't really do any damage either. So it just makes fights go on for, like, unnecessary lengths of time. That's the frustrating aspect of it. And, you know, Final Fight 1... And I hate to keep referring back to it, but it's just such a perfectly paced game when it comes to your boss fights and things like that. Boss fights don't overstay their welcome in the first Final Fight. I mean, even the final boss fight in that game, you can still dish out the damage pretty quickly on him and get it done. But this, some boss fights will take you minutes to complete, and that's just way too long for a game like this. Alright, so this is our final level. I think we're probably going to end up 1cc in this game. And I forgot to mention on the previous level, these are actually mines, and enemies can walk into them. So you can also throw the enemies right on top of them. And like a dumbass, I just walked right into that guy. You know, I've said it like 5 times now. Don't walk into the Zangief looking guys. Zangief being a character from Street Fighter 2, if you guys are unfamiliar with that. Not just Street Fighter 2, but the Street Fighter series. And yet I keep doing it. I keep just walking right into them. They just grab me. So by pressing down and attack in air, you'll do, you know, a weaker air attack, and you can cancel that into a jump kick if you want to. But a lot of times you can use it to sort of like stun an enemy, and then you can grab them after you do it. It's risky, but it is something that you can do. And sometimes on the Andors in particular, I'll just take advantage of that. For one, it'll get a little bit of extra damage off on them. 2, it allows me to get in and to throw them, which is, you know, my most powerful attack outside of my extra joy attack. But I don't want to use the extra joy attack unless there's health on screen, because it uses up health like this. There we go. It does a lot of damage, but man, it eats up my health too. And enemies do dish out damage in this game. That is one thing that has carried over from the very first final fight, is enemies still do a lot of damage in this game. Enemies are dangerous in this if you let them hit you. See, that was just cheap right there. I was just moving right. That Robert Dick just jumped right in my face, and I really couldn't do anything about it. So there's quite a few, you know, portions of the game where enemies just come out of nowhere. They just smack you right in the face, and it's cheap. Now, you had that to a degree in the first final fight as well. Like the Hollywoods and the Elgatos could do this upside down jumping air attack, where they would basically be flying at you upside down, but they didn't go along the Z-axis. So they basically could only go left to right. There was no up or down movement as they were in the middle of their jumping attack. So it was actually easy to avoid. You just move down. But with the Roberts and the Leons, it's like they just lock onto you wherever you are, so you don't really have a way of avoiding them. Let's see if there's anything in there. We just gotta watch. We got a barbecue, so that's some health. And we just got an extra life, so we're back up to 3 lives. Another extra life from points. Alright, let's just keep going. Now the safest thing to do here would just be to jump kick these guys over and over. As long as you can get a time to where you're attacking both of them with the same attack. Just like that. Looks like the Andors and the Andor Juniors, they get up at different intervals. So it's like the Andor Junior... I don't know. No, it looks like it's the same interval. I think it's randomized. I think there's some RNG involved. I mean, if so, that's interesting. That can actually make things more challenging. See, in the first final fight, enemies always stayed down, basically, for like the same amount of time. You know, enemies of the same type, specifically. So like, Andor Juniors and Andors, I think, had the same amount of time that they took to get up in the first final fight. Whereas these guys, like Andor Jr. in particular, feels like his wake up is almost randomized. Like sometimes he'd get up at the same rate as the Andor. Sometimes he would take longer. That's interesting. See, look at that. Happened again. Remember when I was streaming this on Twitch, trying to practice it, people were complaining about those enemies. And now I kind of see what they're talking about. You know, my first run of this game, it didn't really faze me that much. But through subsequent runs, it's really become apparent how cheap they can be. See, just like that. So this is a G Andor. He's more powerful than either of the other two Andors we fought. Alright, so we're getting close to the final boss fight now, and we got some more invincibility, which I'm not even really sure why this is a power-up, because for one, it doesn't last very long, and two, it appears very infrequently in the game. Just makes you wonder why they even went through the trouble of including it in this game. The same thing it was with Final Fight Guy. I picked it up once in Final Fight Guy, encountered not a single enemy for like the 10 seconds it was active. And I was like, what was the point of that? That was just... I'm not a fan of games that just include power-ups just because they can, and not because they should. Like that barrel that gave me invincibility, well, it could have given me some health, which would have been a lot more useful at this point. Or maybe, I don't know... God forbid, an actual weapon to use for a change. I don't even think a single weapon has appeared in this level yet, which is really something if you ask me. It's one of the fun things about the best beat-em-ups is they usually have, you know, a good variety of gameplay options. And weapons in this genre is one form of that. Double Dragon had it, Streets of Rage had it, Final Fight had it. Final Fight 2, unfortunately, doesn't really embrace that, it seems. Which makes me wonder, like, if the development process was rushed. It also makes me wonder who actually worked on it. Did they have experience with prior beat-em-ups, that sort of thing. I do still enjoy this game. I'm glad I finally finished it. I'm glad I finally fired it up, finally actually spent some time with it. You know, I've spent several hours with the game now, running through it multiple times. You know, it takes, as you can see, it takes about an hour to get through the game. We're already at the hour mark as of right now, just about. And, this will be like the 4th or 5th time I've completed it. So yeah, I mean, I do enjoy the game. I enjoy it more now than I did when I first finished it. But, you know, when I do these Let's Plays, it's like I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to not mention all these things, because, you know, someone might be stumbling upon this video, and maybe they heard great things about Final Fight 2, and maybe they just want the real story. You know, regardless of whatever my opinions are or my observations are about the game, though, like, I think it is still an enjoyable game. It's definitely not the best when it comes to these beat-em-ups, but it is better than some of the other beat-em-ups on the Super Nintendo. Like, you look at the, you know, Rival Turf or something like that, you know, some of the rushing beat games. It's definitely better than those, and it's definitely smoother than some other beat-em-ups on the system as well, like Super Double Dragon. Now, whether it's more enjoyable than that is, I can't really say. Super Double Dragon is actually one of those games I haven't played that much. I've only played the first level or two. Much like Final Fight 2, I was underwhelmed by Super Double Dragon in the past when I owned it. So I never really went back to it. But I was underwhelmed by Super Double Dragon for different reasons than I was with Final Fight 2. Like, Final Fight 2 is a very well optimized game, you can see. It really never slows down. There's very little flicker and things like that. The sprites are actually quite large, which is nice. It's just repetitive. Now, Super Double Dragon, I noticed the frame rate was lower than, like, Final Fight or Final Fight 2. Your characters were tiny and the gameplay was much slower. It felt like, you know, it took ages for your moves to come out. But I still want to go through it. I've never finished it. I feel like I'm obligated to do it. Alright, so we're actually getting close to the final boss. But yeah, if you guys aren't too terribly critical about beat-em-ups and you like your Super Nintendo beat-em-ups, I do recommend playing this game if you haven't played it. Unfortunately, I think it's one of those Super Nintendo games that's really gone up in price because it's not as common as some other games on the Super Nintendo. But if you're down with emulation or you got a flash card or something like that, I do recommend giving it a try if you're a fan of the genre. And of course that wasn't health, as expected. Just lost another life unnecessarily, that was my fault. See, I just got completely gypped by that Leon guy. Look at that, again, you can't do anything about that. Except maybe use your extra joy attack, but they're so fast that and your extra joy attack comes out so slow that it's, I don't know, it's very hard to react to those guys. It's definitely the sort of thing where you kind of have to memorize their locations, it seems. Oh, that was horrible. See, the Alec guys, they're the second worst enemies in the game. I'm gonna say the Leons and the Roberts are the worst because it almost feels like you can't do anything about their attacks. But the Alex, man, they can just really catch you off guard, and they probably do the most damage of all the enemies in the game. Of all the normal enemies in the game, not the bosses. Now I need to play it really safe because I need my full health bar at the final boss. And the crappy thing is just like in the original Final Fight, they just go off screen. And it's insanely frustrating. You just get gypped. Yeah, we're probably not gonna complete this. I mean, we're gonna complete it, we're just not gonna one credit clear it. Which is a shame. I mean, it's really not a difficult game at all. And, you know, a big part of my problem is losing lives when I shouldn't have lost lives. But it's all my fault. You know, I take full responsibility. Oh, now that was just BS. I wanted to see what was in that barrel, and I think the final boss was just right there, too. See, now we gotta go through this whole section all over again. I mean, it beats going through the whole stage all over again, but we've gotta do it again. Like, that makes you just want to, like, shut this Let's Play off and just re-record the whole damn thing, but I'm not going through that nonsense I did with the first Final Fight. The first Final Fight on Super Nintendo, it took me 3 or 4 runs, attempted runs, to actually get the Let's Play that you guys saw. I spent 3 hours trying to get a Let's Play of it, and because I got to the final boss, and like, I felt like I could have 1cc'd it, and I don't know, I wasn't in the right mindset either. I was very, actually, kind of very anxious and annoyed that day. Not just with the Final Fight attempted Let's Play, but, you know, with work and stuff like that. It was, I think I did it after coming home from, like, a 12-hour shift or something like that at work, and that wasn't wise, but I was really comfortable with the game. I was like, oh, I just 1cc'd it over the weekend, and or something like that. I don't remember the exact details. But it ended up taking me well over 3 hours to get that Let's Play down. You know, I ran through the entire game, got to the final boss, got a game over, went back to the beginning of the stage, and I powered off the system. I just reset it. I got really frustrated, and, you know, I basically threw away the Let's Play. But I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, I'm not proud of my performance now. Like, I feel like I should have gotten a 1cc on this. But, you know, what can you do? I'm not spending 3 hours to record a beat 'em up I don't even really care for all that much. I mean, I like it, I just... It's not gonna be a go-to game on the Super Nintendo for me. You know, I can enjoy it, but I'll just play the first Final Fight, or I'll play Turtles in Time, or something like that, if I'm gonna play a beat 'em up on the Super Nintendo. Final Fight Guy. Oh my god, I did it again. Stop grabbing me. That's why you don't walk up to those guys. But what you'll notice in this game is, like, the enemy combinations can be really annoying. Like, either they'll throw, like, 3 Alex at you, or they'll throw these Zangief-looking guys at you. And you can't really do anything with them. You can just jump kick them over and over. But then the Alec comes out of nowhere, because they just like to huddle off screen, and then they just charge in at you. And even if, like, you try to jump kick them, actually, we weren't even close to the final boss. For some reason, I thought that, yeah, I think we're gonna actually go downwards. Yeah, you'll notice that, like, you know, the enemy combinations in this can be supremely annoying. And in the first Final Fight, I didn't really notice, you know, specific enemy combinations giving me more trouble than others. I felt like everything was pretty balanced in that game. It was less about being cheap in the first Final Fight than this one is. And look at how little damage I'm doing to these guys. So I could basically just sit here all day. Yeah, it'll be interesting when this Let's Play is posted. I'm really curious to see what everyone thinks of this game. It's not one I hear spoken of very often. I mean, it and Final Fight 3. Final Fight 3 in particular was a very, very late release on the system. It was in that last-ditch Capcom publishing effort on the system. They basically released Final Fight 3, Mega Man X3, and there might have been another game that they released around the same time, the same year on Super Nintendo. Okay, no, this is the final boss. Oh, we were so close, too. Alright, well, this is it, guys. Watch how entertaining this is. is the most amazing final boss in the history of the beat 'em up. You just gotta watch out for his high jump. Now he's also got an attack where he does this spinning attack, just like that. You can just pretty much jump kick him out of it. I wonder if there's anything hidden over here. Nope. No point icons. Let's try this one. He's like, oh no, you stay away from my lamp. You get near his lamps, then he goes crazy. Alright, so we'll just go back to it. Yeah, see, at this point, since I've already continued, I don't even really care anymore. You know, let's experiment. See what's behind his fiery lamps. Yeah, there's really nothing else going on here. Yeah, so I really just... I think I was laughing aloud when I got to this guy for the first time on stream, because I basically did this the very first time I got to him, and I think the first time I beat the game, it was a 1 credit clear my very first attempt on Twitch, which is really one thing in and of itself. But I got to the final boss, I think I only had 1 life left, and I just jump kicked him over and over, and I beat him. I was like, wow, that's something. Oops. There's another extra life. Yeah, so we pretty much got this. I'm just trying to do more damage to him. Get this over with a little bit faster. There we go. And that's that. That, my friends, is Final Fight 2 for the Super Nintendo. Which unfortunately took us an hour and a quarter to get through. So yeah, like I said, guys, that's Final Fight 2 for the Super Nintendo. Oh man, dying on the last level, getting a game over in the last level was kind of frustrating because I wasn't really planning on it. There's definitely some parts of the game where I definitely had more trouble than I should have. I think a lot of it was just, you know, being tired and not really paying too much attention on certain parts. Like, you know, that second boss, we lost 2 lives, and on another level, we lost 2 lives. And, you know, we just, you know, the game just kind of siphoned the lives out of us, unfortunately. And, much of that was my fault. I just wasn't really playing as well as I could have. But that's okay. You know, unlike the first Final Fight on Super Nintendo, I'm not going to try to be a perfectionist and, you know, get frustrated and reset at the very end of the Let's Play. But yeah, that's that. I mean, the game asks you to challenge the other mode. Unfortunately, like, those modes aren't really all that much more challenging. Enemies really just take longer to kill. They're not even that much more aggressive. You know, so you notice how, like, the enemies were kind of like bullet sponges. That's what we call enemies that have very high HP in like run and gun games, or you know, first person shooters or shoot 'em ups, where enemies take like an unnecessary amount of hits to take out. That's what a lot of the enemies are like in Final Fight 2, and it just gets worse and worse on hard mode and then expert mode. And so, you know, that hour-long experience probably would take an hour and a half on expert mode, because everything takes so much longer to kill. That might be a slight exaggeration, but it's pretty bad how long it takes to kill certain enemies in expert mode. Not certain, pretty much every enemy in expert mode. It gets pretty bad towards the end of the game. So, but yeah, that's Final Fight 2, guys, for the Super Nintendo. I hope you guys enjoyed this Let's Play. I'm trying to think of other things I could say or mention. I probably will eventually try my hand at Final Fight 3, probably sooner than later. So in the coming months, or even the coming weeks, who knows? Maybe you guys will see some Final Fight 3 action here. Not sure if I'm going to ever do Final Fight Guy, because it's not that much different from the first Final Fight, aside from the fact that you can play as Guy. There are some interesting background differences and things like that. Extra, you know, tweaks to some of the backgrounds, like the bar in Final Fight 1. Actually, you know, the signs actually animate now in the Final Fight Guy version, which they did not in the original version. So, I don't know. There's some things that could entice me to do a Let's Play on that, but I think Final Fight 3 will be my focus, along with games like Streets of Rage on the Sega Genesis, which I've gotten many requests to do as well. And it's another one I've actually never finished. So, you know, much like Final Fight 1 and Final Fight 2, and then Final Fight 3, that would actually be an accomplishment for me to finish the first Streets of Rage. So we'll see what happens with that. So yeah, again, guys, this is pretty much recorded at least a month and a half in advance. You know, yeah, we'll see how this goes. Again, thanks for watching, and you know, if you guys checked out any of the Let's Plays or live streams in October, thanks again for checking those out. I hope you guys enjoyed them, and so that's pretty much going to do it for me, guys. Nothing really else here to say. So thanks for watching, guys. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I've got a lot of Let's Plays here and many more to come. And if you're already subbed, thank you for your usual support. Hope you guys continue to enjoy these videos. And until the next one, take it easy.